Good afternoon, everyone. We'll get started shortly.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Heather Taubert, AMLA's Director of Membership Programs, and we'd like to thank you for joining us today for AMLA's second quarterly all-membership meeting for 2025. We've been busy with exciting projects this quarter, which we have shared with you throughout our Monday morning briefing newsletters, committee meetings, and member emails. We greet you on behalf of our CEO, Tom Dobbins, who is traveling this week. I'd also like to recognize the rest of the AMLA team joining us today, and I encourage you to use the information in the chat to contact any of us. You can also use the chat function to contact your colleagues during the presentation. We have a robust agenda today. We will begin with a reminder about AMLA's new membership portal, which will make it easier for you to update your member roster within your utility, register for upcoming webinars, pay your yearly membership dues, and connect with your peers. AMLA sent out a reminder and included several articles in Monday morning briefing newsletter, including the one from this past Monday, June 23rd. We encourage you to log in with a new password and navigate the new system. We are still working to optimize the system, identify and remove any bugs, and consolidate duplicate records. So if you log in and find any errors, any omissions, feel free to contact us by emailing info@amwa.net. And we appreciate your patience as we work through this process and get everything set up. All of these efforts are to ensure that we encourage knowledge sharing among our community. Peer learning is one of the best benefits of AMLA membership. So I encourage you to ask questions, speak up during the course of this webinar briefing, and we'll have also brief programmatic updates on our utility management policy and efforts. We will meet one of AMLA's newest member utilities, and we'll end with an open Q&A session on anything you have heard today or any question you have about AMLA programs. So with that, with knowledge sharing being one of AMLA's strategic pillars, we are showcasing our utility management program area today. One of AMLA's hallmark events is the Executive Management Conference. My colleague, Antoinette Barber, AMLA's Director of Communications and Utility Management Programs, will give everyone a conference preview, discuss upcoming webinar topics, AMLA's awards programs, and tell members how you can get engaged.
Heather, I appreciate it. Good afternoon again, everyone. As Heather mentioned, I am Antoinette Barber, the Director of AMLA's Communications and Utility Management Programs, and I'm going to provide you with a brief overview of some of our efforts. I also noticed, and I don't want to put him on the spot, but I noticed that our awards education chair, Robert Chang, is on the line. So, Robert, I don't know if you wanted to chime in. If you can advance the slide, please, to talk about, which is our first thing up, our awards process. So, Robert, did you want to chime in?
No, Antoinette, I think you're doing a fantastic job.
Okay. All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. I wanted to give you the opportunity. And so, one of the ways, certainly, that AMWA recognizes the great work in the utility management space is through our utility management awards. Our regular awards program starts at the gold level. And then once you have won a gold award, you are eligible in 3 years for a platinum award. And if you win that in another 3 years, you are eligible for a sustainability award. Thank you, Wenjel, for putting the link to the awards overview in the chat. And so just as some few reminders, the applications are due to us by July 11th. We're trying to see if that works for as many of the utilities as possible. Address each section as thoroughly as possible, being sure to include the metrics. Use the effective utility management primer as a guide, which is also on our website. Use the checklist that we have provided to you and the application to ensure a complete application. We are also here to answer any questions that you may have, to give you examples of winning applications, and to ensure your success. So please submit the applications to me or info@amwa.net by the deadline. Again, this is one of the ways that we really highlight the work that you do. As Robert did, if someone can put in even the link to the webinar that we did with Robert, Robert did a thorough overview of the awards process and just how the awards process helped as a utility to identify your strengths, also to identify some areas that you may need to work on or improve as a utility. So it's really a good team building and utility-wide exercise, and we love to award our members. It is a peer review process that will take place after we gather the awards, and we will award all eligible and all winning utilities at our upcoming Executive Management Conference in Austin in October. So if you have any questions for me, please put it in the chat or send me an email. Thank you. Our upcoming webinar, one of the other ways that we do utility management is through our webinars. If somebody could put the webinar link in the chat. We do have an upcoming webinar integrating Envision with EUM, as we've talked about, effective utility and management, advancing sustainable water infrastructure. And so we have a great program set in conjunction with our utility management committee set for July 15th. I encourage you to register today for that. If you have not already registered for it, there is a link in the chat with additional information. So please join us and please access all of the recordings that we have over there. We've done a really tremendous job partnering with our members and also some of our subscribers to bring you top tier content. There's one that we recently did on data centers and one that we did on compensation surveys. And so I encourage you again, this is a part of your member benefits to take full advantage when you have a chance to go back and look at some of these playbacks. And finally, before we pivot a little bit, our executive management conference that Heather did mention previously and that I also mentioned, our premier event is coming up. We have made a tremendous progress on that. We have our featured keynote speaker, Angel Nix, who is an instructor from UNC. She actually did the Water Wastewater Leadership Center instruction, and we're happy to have her with us. We're going back to a 3-hour format where she's going to provide maybe just about 30 minutes of context and then have the remaining 2.5 hours where you all can learn from one another, which is what you like to do. So you'll be broken out into small groups and tables and given exercises, interactive exercises to engage in. So we're really looking forward to that. In addition, we always have our networking, our networking dinner, our receptions, our awards program, which I mentioned earlier. And also everything is bigger in Texas. So instead of just a one-part site visit, we're doing a 2-part. So we'll go to Austin Water and we'll tour those facilities, and also then we'll tour their lands for a hike. So I hope you're up for it, and we're excited, again, to bring you top tier content. There is information that has been put in the chat, And also on our website, we should have a full program available for you, definitely and up and running in July. And so I'm going to pause here. If you have any questions, please put it in the chat or let us know. All right. Great. I managed to stay on time, Christy. I managed to stay on time, Christy. So before we introduce our next, you can go back to the poll, our next speaker, who's Christy Hawaski, which many of you know. She is certainly a friend of AMWA and really a powerhouse in the water sector. She's formerly of the VOW campaign, and she was also the chief of staff for the New Orleans Water and Sewage Board, or the Sewerage and Water Board of New Orleans. And we are happy to have her here today to talk about certainly an issue that's near and dear to my heart, which is water sector communications. But before we go into Christy, and she's also now the owner and operator and founder of HCB Strategies, which is a consulting firm that she has that does all things water, comms, and events. And so, Christy, thank you for joining us today. We are, again, so happy to have you here to talk about some of the issues that really, as utility management leaders, that we have. So let's launch the poll really quick to make sure you all are awake and paying attention. Can you all see that? Communication challenges. What are your top communication challenges? Are they community stakeholders, media, political or local governance, or workforce? Thank you for chiming in. Okay, we have about, looks like about half of the respondents. Okay, 60%. Can we get to 70? 63, okay. All right, there we are. We're over 70, great. Not to say that those of you who haven't responded need to stop. Okay, Christy, can you see the results?
I can see those, thank you.
Okay, great. So stakeholders, looks like it's the #1 comms challenge, followed closely by workforce. And then we have media. And then this is surprising to me. Well, it's close when you look at the numbers, that media and political governance are running neck and neck, similar to workforce and stakeholder engagement. So we're going to stop sharing this. And Christy, again, thank you for joining us. And I yield the floor to you.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to share my screen. Give me a thumbs up, somebody, if you can see that. Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much. Well, thank you so much, Antoinette and Wendell and team, for inviting me to hop on today. It's really nice to see many familiar faces. And for those of you whom I have not had the pleasure of meeting, just a few moments of background to share some context on why I'm here today and why I'm even slightly qualified to share some of my thoughts and recent ideas. So I am based in New Orleans, where I started my career as a litigator. That segued into public policy and government affairs for quite a while. I spent 5 years at the Sewerage and Water Board as the chief of staff with Ghassan Korban, who many of you know. That was a true one water utility. We did drinking water, wastewater, stormwater, and generated our own power, which was a pretty unique experience. After that, I joined the U.S. Water Alliance as the director of the Value of Water campaign, which I think probably many of you are familiar with, particularly through Imagine a Day Without Water, our annual day of action. And after that, I left and I recently launched my own firm, drawing on all of those years of strategy and communication for impact. And it is called HCB Strategies, named after my 3 sons, Henry, Cooper, and Ben. So thanks for letting me share a little bit about that. Let's dive in here. So, within the confines of our sector, within our own echo chamber, it is a common refrain, I think, that water folks could do a better job of communicating about water. Generally, as a critical resource, water is undervalued. The majority of people take it for granted. The sector writ large sometimes is considered to have, an unclear brand or challenges with forming an identity. Oftentimes we are handed the short stick when it comes to funding and attention, especially as compared to other infrastructure like transportation or energy. And so why is that? It's been my observation that oftentimes in utilities, we tend to separate the notion of communications, the communications department over here, developing messages and doing its thing, and leadership, that there's a gap that exists between those two concepts. And in many utilities, many utilities do dedicate significant time and resources and funding toward creative content development and toward messaging and drafting press releases, but very little effort on developing excellent communicators, especially at the leadership level outside of the communications department. So why is that? Why does this kind of invisible gap exist between communications and then leadership and all of that entails? Well, it likely has something to do with the fact that meaningful communication is just hard. It's hard to meaningfully engage with, your partner or your child or your friend. And as a leader, if communicating is not a specific responsibility, specifically something that is on your task list, it's certainly easy to move it to the bottom of the priority list or to outsource it or to allow the communications team to do that job. And that's certainly not a dig on leaders. Leaders have, a million other projects and crises that are on their plate every day. So it's very understandable. Nevertheless, this gap does tend to exist. So the fact remains, though, that leaders ultimately are the message bearers for utility. They are the vision setters, they are the decision makers, the morale builders, the information keepers, and especially in this current political climate, they are more and more frequently the advocates. It is the leaders that people would like to hear from. So what if we closed the gap intentionally and integrated the concepts of good, meaningful, impactful communication into all aspects of leadership? If we prioritized communicating at the highest levels and created a movement, one leader at a time, perhaps it would yield a sustainable effort around improving communications for our sector, and not just look like a super expensive ad campaign that comes and goes. So, that all sounds lovely. Yes, we would all like to be great communicators. We would like to make a bigger impact and elevate our sector's identity. But it also sounds a little ambiguous. So how would we go about doing that? Well, this is about a 2 or 3 minute version of something that could easily be a workshop or a more in-depth program or coaching experience. But there are 4 kind of guidelines on how to go about doing this. The first is to start with a deep, deep understanding of good communication. And I use the word good intentionally. It's not a lack of effort around finding a more exciting adjective. And it is because the word good, has a very broad connotation that encompasses a lot of what goes into communication, but primarily because it starts with internal foundations, looking inside and discovering your own authenticity, who you are authentically as a communicator. It entails some self-awareness. It entails a little bit of vulnerability, maybe a lot of vulnerability, compassion for your audience, and a deep, deep level of preparation that can only come from you personally. So, as the saying goes, well, let me back up a moment and say there are certainly elements of coaching here. Courage is required, growth is required, some introspection is required, but it's a minimal financial investment for a pretty big personal and professional benefit. And as the saying goes, if you don't know yourself, you can't know someone else. I think that is analogous here. Maybe not the perfect analogy, but it's, the voice inside your head, the voice that you use to talk to yourself, is the one that ultimately will come out when you're communicating with somebody else, regardless of who the audience is, right? So it has to start inside. The second key to success here is identifying impact. Every time you engage with somebody, regardless of who it is, there is a goal. There is a desired impact as part of that engagement, that communication, that conversation. And so recognizing the why. Why am I engaging with my leadership team in this meeting, for example? Why have I accepted this meeting with my mayor or the chair of my board, for example? What is my desired outcome? And let that drive the intentionality around developing your communication for that particular interaction. That can really help support clarity, what is necessary for the message versus unnecessary, how concise it needs to be, for instance, and it eases decision making overall. Sometimes as utilities or even as leaders, we struggle to decide when it's appropriate to join a conversation and when it's not. And if you are clear on what's the impact I'm hoping to make here, it can help make that decision quite a bit easier. So after you understand who you are as a communicator, after you've identified the impact for engaging, then adjust your own style, own yourself, but adjust it to meet your audience, where they are. So you can tweak your style, your message, your tone in a way that allows you to remain authentic in who you are, but that works to help persuade or connect with the audience that you are speaking to. So, for example, if it's a political audience, your goal or your impact is likely to get to yes. That might mean a shorter message, a more impactful message. If your audience is community, the goal might be, or the impact might be, to share information in a way that is understood and consumed and drives behavioral change. If your audience is media, it might be to raise visibility about something that you or the utility are doing in the community. So you can tweak to meet your audience's needs while remaining who you are. If you are like the funny guy or the funny gal, that's okay. You can be funny. You can add the element of humor into most of the ways that you communicate, obviously with some barriers there. If you're communicating about a crisis, you don't want to be cracking jokes, but I think you understand the point there. And so last but not least is integration. This outlook or this approach isn't just intended to be in preparation for the big interview on the evening news or the keynote address at the conference that you're invited to give. It's really intended to be integrated into every table as a leader. And that will help build the movement into really prioritizing good communication in everything that you and your utility do. Sorry, there we go. So a few really important points here. This is not micromanaging your communications director. Your communications director should remain autonomous and trusted and empowered to do things like create messages and guide creative content and be a spokesperson and develop reporters with relationships. That's not adding to a leader's plate whatsoever. So that's not what this is. This is not just media training. Media training is an important aspect of the way that we develop communication skills and certainly applies to some audiences, but this is a much broader and deeper approach to handling communication on a sustainable basis. This is certainly not silencing other great communicators. There are people in your organization who excel and who enjoy public speaking. By all means, empower and uplift and elevate those team members and those skill sets. Part of going back to the foundation around self-awareness and authenticity and who you are is recognizing where you might be the best spokesperson or speaker and where it might be somebody else. And last but not least, this is not pretending to be something that you're not or something that we are not. Nobody would anticipate that a utility leader in any regard is also the world's best public speaker or polished or came straight from Broadway. I mean, those are not things that we are asking for in any way, shape, or form. But things this may be are maybe a little bit uncomfortable, because healthy communication is a little bit vulnerable. You're putting yourself out there, you're opening up, you're inviting trust, and you're hoping that your audience responds in kind. And that can be a little bit uncomfortable. It may be scary. Public speaking is the #1 phobia across the world for a reason. And you know, every single conversation you have, depending on who it's with, could be considered a level of public speaking when there is preparation involved. For many water leaders, not all, but for many, especially those who came up through engineering or through law or many other professions, finance, you know, the coursework doesn't necessarily entail training in communications or training in speaking. And so, you know, if you haven't had the support of the experience, it could be a little daunting at the beginning. But it also will be eye-opening, because when communications get prioritized and integrated at the outset of projects and other efforts, it will soon become clear that good communication is oftentimes the link to the success of the effort. And last but not least, it'll probably be game-changing personally and professionally as you develop deeper relationships with your staff and with your workforce and with your community and with your stakeholders that will bring positive results to the utility for years to come. So folks always ask, you know, what are the tangible benefits of investing in communication? How can I prove that this is working? Show me that it will. And I would say, you know, the biggest answer to that is that impactful communication leads to more yes. When you are communicating well and engaging with authenticity and intention with your board, with your city council about rates, with your senator about funding, with your whomever it may be, it is more likely that you will get to a yes, and that you will see more policy approvals, project approvals, and collaboration amongst the teams that you lead and the people that you work with. Some wonderful, you know, side benefits are developing deeper trust with everybody that your community that your utility interacts with as a community anchor. Oftentimes, when a leader gets more involved in communicating with workforce, there's a lot of morale improvement. I actually just saw on LinkedIn right before this meeting started some poll results or some research showing that the most frequent way for an executive or a leader to communicate with workforce today, as opposed to 2 years ago, is via email. 2 years ago, it was via town hall, according to this LinkedIn research. But today, it's via email. So, you know, if that is the way that you communicate primarily with your workforce, especially if it's a large one, putting the extra effort into how that email is developed so that it reflects you as a human and it's intentional with regard to what you are hoping to achieve. And last but not least, movement building. Sector-wide messaging starts here. We are not going to achieve all that we hope and dream of in terms of, you know, developing a wonderful and successful identity and brand for water by running that Super Bowl ad. It's fun. It would be awesome. That's probably not going to do it. It starts with us. We are the solution, and one utility at a time. By incorporating some of these good and lasting and sustainable skills, we can help start the movement and be the solution. So I'll stop there for today. Those are just a few of the things I've been pondering in the past couple of months. If any of that resonates with you, or you have questions, I would be absolutely honored to continue the conversation or to answer at any time. My email address is on the screen, and I also can be found on LinkedIn. So thank you again to the AMWA team for inviting me on today to share some of that perspective.
Thank you, Christy. This was really insightful. For my colleagues, they're probably shaking their head yes. We had an offsite earlier this week, and certainly we spent a good portion talking about comms and how building trust is key, and even creating vulnerabilities. So thank you. If any of you on the line do have questions for Christy, there is a Q&A at the end of the meeting, but feel free also to put it in the chat. We are actively monitoring that, but I think those were some good high-level nuggets to provide today on comms. There is actually a question now, and so before I switch it over to advocacy, Christy, it says, what are the best opportunities for media training? And that's from Craig Palmer, in Erie Waterworks in Pennsylvania.
Hi, Craig. I would say, honestly, in my experience, that there are firms you can partner with, whether it's PR or comms firms, but there are folks who will do specific media training. It's usually about a half-day session for a smaller group of folks. It involves some camera work, some role play work, and I found that to be the most successful way to do that piece of it. I would also put out there that some of you may know Rogue Water Lab. Their Catalyst conference this year will be focused on the interactions between utilities and media reporters. So if that's an issue for you or something that's top of your list on something you'd like to improve on, maybe consider going or sending someone from your shop to that experience too.
Great. Thanks for the question, Craig. And again, thank you, Christy, for the overview. Christy's email is in the chat, and we'll get to more questions that you may have at the end of the webinar. And so now we're going to shift gears for a little bit, and I've spotlighted my colleague, the newly minted Director of Regulatory Affairs, Jessica Evans, to give our advocacy or a portion of our advocacy update, our regulatory and sustainability update. So, hey, Jess.
Hello and hello everyone. Because Dan's not here today, I'm going to try and rapid fire and give you as much information in a short amount of time as I can. So if we go to the next slide, I'm going to go over really quickly regulatory update, a little bit of the sustainability and resilience update. But first, on the note of Christy talking about how it's all on us to inspire the water world, I have the opportunity to participate in a Work in Water event for young interns in DC. So all of you all who are in the DC area, if you could disseminate the opportunity with any interns you have, if you have kids or kids have friends in the DC area, it's a free opportunity on July 16th, talking about working in water. The focus is going to be on PFAS. I just put the opportunity in the chat, so please share that. But very first thing we'll get to is staffing update. I'm your new Director of Regulatory Affairs. I'll now be leading all of our regulatory engagement, and I'll be leading the regulatory committee with our two chair and co-chairs. I'm really excited to get to know you all more in this kind of perspective, and I'm really excited to advance AMWA's goal of trying to get more meetings with EPA rule writers and other administration folks. Thank you for the folks in the chat. Really excited to get you all in rooms with them to kind of give your perspective as EPA looks to revise some of the rules that the last administration had and as it moves forward on some of the other ones. So please don't hesitate to contact me if you want to do one-on-one meetings, talk about whatever is really important to you. I'm happy to do that. So the first thing I'm going to go over briefly, because we did talk about this, we sent you all an outline of the press release. We went over it in last month's regulatory committee meeting. But the first thing is the PFAS National Primary Drinking Water Regulation May 14th announcement. EPA in this gave a bunch of information about what they wanted to do with the last administration's PFAS National Primary Drinking Water Regulations. What this EPA intends to do is to retain the 4 parts per trillion PFOA and PFOS MCL. They intend to rescind the regulatory hazard index, intend to rescind also the MCLs for 3 of the PFAS, and they are going to announce their intent to revisit the regulatory determinations. They may still end up placing a regulatory determination, but AMWA will be engaging in that comment period if it happens. They also extended the compliance timeline from 3 to 5 years, and they established an exemption framework under Section 1416 of CIDWA. In terms of AMWA's PFAS litigation update, our litigation currently remains on hold in the courts, as EPA and the Justice Department have requested additional time to develop their legal strategy following EPA's PFAS announcement. To our understanding, they're going to maintain all parts of the suit that have to do with the MCLs for PFOA and PFOS. And in early June, the court granted EPA an additional 14-day abeyance. So the next deadline for the next motion to govern will be in late July. On the next slide, we'll get into things we've learned about the revisions to the rules for MDBPs. Big announcement that happened kind of in the background was that the proposal timeline has now shifted. At ACE, EPA folks were letting people know that the agency plans to push its proposal for the rule revisions, which we thought were going to come out this summer, now to 2027. To our understanding, this aligns with the requirement for EPA with their Riverkeepers suit to issue a final decision or promulgate a final rule by September 2028. As you all know, AMWA, along with AWWA, has commissioned Corona Environmental to conduct a study on the relationship between water system residual chlorine measurements and the presence of Legionella in GSA buildings using a nationwide assessment that GSA has conducted over the last administration. We're going to have an update on that soon. I know 2 months ago we had one in the regulatory committee, but initial findings from the study have suggested that there is not a statistically significant relationship between those two factors, which is obviously important for EPA as they consider proposing potentially a minimum residual. And we are hoping and planning to have a meeting between the study partners and authors and EPA and GSA. So more to come on that. If you're interested, plug into the regulatory committee. And then next slide, just some more is happening with lead and copper rule. From information that we've had talking to our partners in EPA, they wanted us to know that EPA intends to visit the LCRI after it gets PFAS sorted out. We'll keep members informed of any potential revisions. More information is in the MMB Monday morning briefings, and you can also email me and I'll give it to you about fluoride. 2 states have now taken actions to ban fluoride. Utah expressly banned fluoride, and Florida banned the addition of any water quality additives that they then defined. In June's regulatory committee meeting, I will say we had a really interesting discussion from some of our Florida members about their involvement with the state drafting of the bill and how they actually intervened to reduce some of the worst aspects of the proposed language that could have been really difficult for water systems. So if you're interested in that discussion, don't hesitate to join the regulatory committee or reach out to me. And then major changes have happened with NEPA. A Supreme Court case came out that limited the scope of environmental reviews. That's going to be in the June WUE. So if you want to know more, please let me know. And then I'm going to really rapidly let you know some things in the resilience and sustainability space. First is that AMWA's position listing for the Manager of Sustainability and Resilience Policy is now live. If you know anyone who is interested in that, please share it with them. We'd love to have more people in water. And then big update that's happening, as you all know, the Inflation Reduction Act had some tax credits, tax incentives that were accessible to publicly owned institutions like public water utilities through direct pay for some certain clean energy provisions and projects. Bad news, but good news is that the Senate's version of the reconciliation bill, which my colleague Megan will talk about, will, if passed as it is, would retain with phase out some of the major financial incentives available to public water systems for projects producing or investing in solar or wind projects, and it would fully retain the incentives for energy produced from biogas, so great news for wastewater utilities and folks who maybe have micro or inline hydropower. 2 more things. EPA is continuing to propose primacy for states for Class 6 wells, which are the carbon sequestration wells under the Underground Injection Control Program. If you're in Arizona or Texas, you have open comment periods. If you're not engaging in this, but you want to know more, you want to know what maybe to ask and flag for your state primacy agency to consider when doing permits, let me know. We have some great partners in the water sector that have created things for water utility managers to consider asking when permits are created. And then one last thing, I participated in a really amazing Water and Power Resilience workshop in May, and from what we understand, EPA and DOE, Department of Energy, are really committed and interested in investing in this resilience and intersection of water and power sectors as it pertains to especially data centers and the development of artificial intelligence in the US. So really excited for that. More news to come. Hopefully the new person will be able to take that on. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Megan to give an update of everything we are doing on the Hill.
Thank you, Jessica. So covered a lot of territory with reg, and we've been equally busy with the legislative affairs side of things. We've had 107 meetings on the Hill so far this year, so really getting around to a lot of offices, and we've reintroduced a number of our priority bills. So I'll start out by giving you an update on two of the pressing topics that we're watching right now in Congress. The first one of those is the reconciliation bill. So as you may know, that reconciliation bill passed through the House a few weeks ago. The heart of this bill is an extension of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the Trump administration's 2017 legislation. The majority of the bills included in that legislative vehicle are being extended in the reconciliation bill. So the CBO estimates that the package would raise the deficit, which is the gap between how much the government earns in tax revenue and how much it spends, by about $3.8 trillion over the next 10 years. So that's the House version of the bill. Right now, the Senate's continuing to put together its version of the bill, and they've set an internal deadline of July 4th to pass this. So they're still working away at that. Senate Majority Leader John Thune aims to bring the bill to the floor as soon as possible. Could be any day now, but they are still working through a good number of hurdles. They're in the midst of going through the Byrd Rule process, which is where the parliamentarian will review different portions of the bill and make decisions about which policies comply with the reconciliation rules, which are that it has to be budgetary in nature. So there are several key provisions that have been removed already, such as language that affects the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau funding, judicial authority on nationwide injunctions, certain restrictions for SNAP benefits. And because of this, lawmakers are kind of going back to the drawing board, assessing the overall revenue and savings of the bill. And obviously, you've probably heard the biggest piece of this comes down to Medicaid cuts that have been proposed, which is receiving quite a lot of pushback from members across the aisle. So the latest version of this bill is intended to, or is expected to include a stabilization fund for rural hospitals. Senate Republicans have voiced concerns over the Medicaid cuts and specifically are trying to include some smaller provisions to stymie the impact of that on their constituents. So we will be keeping an eye out for how that develops over the coming week or two. And related, the FY26 budget, that process has been on hold as reconciliation has been playing out. So now that the House has passed its reconciliation bill, they're starting to draft the FY26 purpose bills. Each subcommittee has started to do that, and they're starting to schedule markups for each of those bills. Simultaneous to that, the FY26 president's budget request has, or at least a skinny version of that has been released. As I'm sure you all know, there was a proposal to cut the SRFs by about 90%. AMWA has pushed back on this, and we actually drafted and led a letter that was signed by partner water organizations, as well as, some local governmental organizations like Mayor's Conference and NLC opposing the cuts to the proposed cuts to the SRFs. We don't anticipate that these cuts will actually be included in any final version of appropriations bills. We've heard directly from the chair of the House Appropriations Subcommittee that's in charge of the EPA budget, who has said that Congress won't approve those cuts. We've also heard from Senator Murkowski, who chairs the Interior Appropriations Subcommittee, that these cuts aren't realistic. So we're encouraged by that. And, the SRFs have broad bipartisan support. So we're continuing to conduct outreach on this topic, but have some validation from relevant leadership that they don't intend to actually go through with this proposal from the administration. Like I mentioned, the House Appropriations Interior Subcommittee was set to mark up its FY26 bill this week. That recently got pushed back. So we right now are not exactly sure when that's going to be rescheduled for, but anticipate it happening soon. And for the Senate side, we're expecting them to take up the budget after they're finished passing the reconciliation bill. And we're continuing to monitor the markup on both the House and Senate side. So, but despite these proposed SRF cuts, there were some pieces of good news in the president's budget request for two programs that AMWA's been conducting lobbying on for the appropriations cycle. One of them is the Reducing Lead in Drinking Water Grant Program, and the other is the Midsize and Large Drinking Water System Infrastructure Resilience and Sustainability Program. Both of those received funding in the president's budget request, which is good news for us, good signal that there are a couple of items that the administration, is willing to work on in a bipartisan manner. So we're excited about that. We've continued to reach out to congressional staff that we've met with about these programs to let them know that they've been funded in the president's budget request, and continuing to do outreach as we see those bills start to get marked up, and do what we can to include both of those programs. Moving over from those two kind of bigger items to individual pieces of legislation, we've been active with the new Congress underway, and there are a number of bills that we've successfully found new sponsors for, that we've gotten introduced. So one of these is, for example, the tax exempt municipal bonds. Those were potentially up for being a pay for in the House's reconciliation bill. We successfully preserved those, and they were left untouched, so that's great news. In addition, the CERCLA liability protection legislation, we have a bipartisan bill this year with Malloy and Marie Gluesenkamp Perez. And we have gotten bipartisan introduction of that bill. We've also secured reintroduction of the Water ISAC Threat Protection Act in both the House and Senate side. So that would promote access to Water ISAC as a resource for cybersecurity for water utilities. In addition to that, we recently reintroduced the Flow Act. We were able to secure a Republican co-lead in the Senate with Senator Justice, who joined on with Senator Bennett, and a new lead in the House with Republican Representative Tenney, and Gwen Moore being the co-lead. So great to know that bipartisan in both the House and Senate, and that was just recently introduced. We're beginning to do some outreach to get former co-sponsors on that bill. And then a couple of other items, some resilience legislation includes 3 different programs, including the midsize and large program that I mentioned earlier, is up for reauthorization. So we are working with Rep. Carbajal and Senator Blunt Rochester to introduce a package that would reauthorize that, as well as the clean water version of the program and the version for small utilities. So that will be hopefully reintroduced soon as a package, just a strict reauthorization. And we are also lining up House and Senate sponsors for legislation to reauthorize LIWAP. Really encouraged to see that Representative Bresnahan has agreed to co-lead. So we have a bipartisan co-lead in the House, still working on the Senate side for that, but conducting a lot of outreach to Republicans to have a strong original co-sponsorship from the beginning, and hoping that we can get that reintroduced shortly. So all of these areas, AMWA has been leading with water sector partners, helping build strong coalitions and demonstrating that the sector can speak with one voice behind a common set of priorities. And while some of these bills still face an uphill battle, you know, LIWAP is going to be a difficult environment right now to get that passed. Others are a priority for the administration, you know, and we have more favorable odds of seeing those passed. We have spoken with EPW and the Energy and Commerce Committee staff. We know that water cybersecurity is a priority for them. We've heard they intend to each individually hold hearings on that topic, and we think it will be a good opportunity to highlight water ISAC as well as that bill. And we've also heard from EPW staff that they intend to work on a comprehensive solution for passive receivers. As you know, passive receivers is a broad term that includes many industries outside of the water sector. So it's good to know that the committee itself wants to do something comprehensive on that issue. And, you know, we have a continued dialogue with them on what they're planning and how we kind of play into that. But as we kind of wait for them to put together a package, we are continuing to conduct outreach and have gotten a lot of support on the Hill. So hopeful that that's a good sign of things to come. So we're encouraged by this framework, and we continue to keep, like I said, an open line of communication with the administration and Congress about our priorities and our perspectives. So I will I'll hand the program over back to Heather, and she'll introduce our featured member.
Great. Thanks, Megan, and thanks, Jessica, for that informative update on our advocacy programs. Now I'm going to switch gears. We continue to make strides in growing and expanding our community of utilities throughout this past year. And we'd like to spotlight one of our newest members. We have with us today, Stephen Cole. He's the Assistant General Manager for Santa Clarita Valley Water Agency. And he will be talking about, give us a little overview of the agency and talk about some of their ongoing projects and what their priorities are. So I will turn it now over to you, Stephen.
Great, thank you, Heather. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Yeah, great. Thank you. It's a pleasure to get started engaging with you all. I noticed a couple names on the participants list that I'm familiar with, so looking forward to engaging with AMWA and getting our agency fully integrated with kind of the goals and objectives of the organization. For our water agency, just give a brief overview of where we're located. We are located in the community of Santa Clarita. That is in California. We'll call it a suburb of Los Angeles. For anybody that's been to the South Coast, maybe Magic Mountain Amusement Park rings a bell. That's the community in which we serve. Currently right around 300,000 population through 75,000 service connections. Our organization roughly has about 260 employees. We have groundwater resources as well as are a state water project contractor in the state of California. So yeah, just really happy to meet everybody. Some of the challenges that are in front of us right now as a water agency, we are having significant challenges with PFAS contamination, low levels in our area, and we've had about half of our well supply be removed from service as it has been impacted by PFAS chemicals. We, as a state water contractor, have access to about 95,200 acre feet of state water project entitlement. We also have local groundwater resources that we rely on, as well as recycled water, and significant groundwater banking investments that we participate in the Central Valley. So hopefully, I just wanted to give a brief overview of the water agency and look forward to engaging with everybody as we go forward. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Stephen. And want to welcome you again to the AMA family. And hopefully we look forward to seeing you in Austin this fall. Speaking of Austin, we're going to translate over to any questions you might have on anything we've talked about today, as well as give you a reminder about our executive management conference. So we will open the floor now for questions on any of our speakers or any of the topics that Jessica and Megan covered in our advocacy section.
There's still the question that Brian Redder put in, Heather, and I believe Megan is going to respond to that.
Yeah, I'm happy to respond. Unfortunately, I have not heard any updates on Jess Kramer's confirmation. I know that the calendar is super backed up, and I don't know if, I haven't heard anything from committee staff about intentions of along the timeline for that. But I know they're continuing to try to push through nominations as fast as they can. I think that unfortunately it's just a tight calendar right now with reconciliation. But I also saw there was a question about the water ISAC and LIWAP bills. So the LIWAP bill, to answer your question, Sarah, has not been reintroduced yet. We have the Democratic and Republican sponsors on the House side ready to reintroduce it, but right now we're working on, like I said, gathering more Republican original co-sponsors so that when we reintroduce that, it's, has a better chance of, we know we can get a lot of Democrats on, but we want to make sure it has an even amount of Democratic and Republican co-sponsors off the bat. So we're kind of in a hold pattern on that until we get commitments from more Republican offices to co-sponsor. And then on water ISAC, yes, that bill has been reintroduced, and I can get you the bill number in just 1 second. So the new bill number for that one, let me see. I can put it in the chat. I think it is HR 2344, and on the Senate side, it's S1118. But I'll put that in the chat.
Last name is Talbert, Talbert.
Great. Anyone else have any questions on what's been covered so far today? Or anything in general?
Jeffrey.
Okay, seeing none. We wanted to just give a quick reminder that our registration is now open for the Executive Management Conference.
Yeah.
That will be October 26th to the 29th in Austin. We hope to see many of you there. And finally, if you're not receiving our outstanding Monday morning briefing or our monthly water utility executive newsletters, please contact Hayden, whose contact information is in the chat. And for up-to-the-minute information, you can always follow us on our social media channels, LinkedIn, X, Facebook, Instagram. Those will be any up-to-minute breaking news alerts will be put on there. And as always, we encourage you to contact us at any time with questions or concerns or ideas you have for future programs. And before we wrap up for today, we like to ask you to take our short survey so that we can keep improving on the content we are bringing you. And I believe Hayden's going to launch that now. Just kind of a overall evaluation of our programming. Excellent. So we thank you again for joining us today, and we hope you have a great upcoming weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.